as I said in the description of this session, I'm doing this without a net. It's going to all be live demo and discussion, and I'm definitely open to questions. If you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A window, not the chat window, the Q&A window, and I'll be happy to try to answer them for you. And I lied when I said I'm doing this without a net, because I do have a safety net underneath of me today. Included on this, I invited Karen Zubetz, who is a personal friend, but she's also a brilliant person who works in development for Essbase 21c. So as I lie to you, she'll correct me and or add additional color commentary to expand on what I'm saying. So welcome, Karen. I really do appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
And I'm actually going to start my video so you can actually see me. So let's go ahead and get started with all of the cool stuff. We have quite a few people on. I'm very happy about that. So Essbase 21c. Now, I've heard it called a whole bunch of things. The first one is Essbase standalone, but the new terminology, and I think it's going to stick, is Essbase independent. And what that means is that it's independent of the platform, wherever you want to put it. If you want to put it onto an on-prem server, if you want to put it on AWS, if you want to put it on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, it can go anywhere. Right now there's a restriction. It can go anywhere that you're running Linux on. At some point this year, hopefully, safe harbor, we will have a Windows version as well. But it really can go anywhere. And you can also install it soon through Oracle Marketplace. Right now, if you were to install it on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, it would be a standalone installation and you'd have to create everything. So it really can go anywhere. And so, as I said, right now it is this independent, but it will also be on Marketplace very soon. I've heard rumor by the end of the month, but that is a safe harbor and don't quote me on that. So if you're planning on migrating from on-prem to Oracle Cloud, or you're on 19c and you're going to migrate to 21c, we wanted to highlight what some of the changes, some of the differences are. If you're already on 19c or on OAC, some of the things I'm going to talk about are going to be familiar to you. Some of them will be brand new. The first thing that I want to get out in the open is the elephant in the room. And that's that people would say, well, I'm on-prem right now and I have EAS. So am I going to lose EAS? What can I do? Well, for a short time, and we haven't been told how long, there is a version of EAS that is being shipped with 21c. It is being called EAS Lite, and it really is not meant to be a long-term solution for you. What it really is meant to be is a short-term until you get used to the web UI and Cube Designer to be able to manage things in the same way that you're doing them today. So there's a couple of things about EAS Lite. So I launched it up here, and you really have to have an administrative server for each different server that you have. And if I expand this out to applications, you'll notice that right now I don't have any applications. And there's a reason for that. Even though if we look at my 21c instance, I've got 3 applications here. I can't see them in EAS. And that's because for it to work, we actually have to go into, I can never remember if it's the database, I think it's the application, and go into the settings and tell it that this particular database or application is being managed by EAS. And when I do this, it will allow it to show up in EAS. Now, the thing is if I do this, it really means this is an application that I have migrated from my on-prem system, and I don't want to take advantage of any of the new feature functionality that I get in 21c. For example, sandboxes or some of the new optimizations or other things. So what I'm going to do is, if I'm doing this, I'm not going to be able to use any of that new feature functionality, but I am going to be able to manage it in EAS. And if I came back in here and I turned this off, once I've had it on and I've turned it off again, I can't go back and turn it back on. So hopefully if this worked right, because I actually haven't tried it on my system. Now I actually get that sample EAS, and in here I can do the standard things that I could do in EAS before. So I can open up 2 outlines, I can copy and paste between them, I can do other things here. So use this tool for right after you've migrated, but then start learning the new tools and migrate to them, because then you can use feature functionality changes. Karen, anything that you want to tell people about in here?
I would only add that even with the Jet UI, you can do viewing activities in the new modern web UI. So if you've enabled an app for EAS, you can still look at it in the web UI. You just need to do your edits from EAS.
Thank you. See, I do have a net here, so. So what Karen was saying is that I came in here, I can come in here and I don't know why my outline is locked, but I can view my outline in here. I just can't make any changes in here. So that's a big change. But EAS is a great thing for those who are migrating. It gives you the chance to get your cubes over here and not have to worry about initially learning everything. I get the question all the time, can I use this new EAS Lite application here, this one, for my Essbase 21c or in Marketplace or in 19c today? And the answer is no. This will only work against the 21c independent installation. It won't work against Marketplace cubes. And somebody asked me why I'm calling the web EAS UI. What I'm talking about when I'm talking about the UI or user interface is this right here. This is a web-based interface that 21c has and 19c has for managing my environment. It has a whole bunch of tabs here. So we see here the applications tab. I have a jobs card, I shouldn't say tab, card that will show me the jobs that I've run interactively. I have something that I can look at my file system on my Essbase server. So I have applications. I also have user directories and the like. The scenarios card is to manage what are called sandboxes and scenarios. And if you're interested in hearing about this, go to the Essbase Days session tomorrow, and I believe Tim Fash is talking about that. For setting up security, I have a card right here. If I'm doing drill through reporting or connecting to on-prem databases or the like, that's what my sources card is. The console, it would be like clicking on the EAS console where I can see things like sessions and other things like that. Database size, statistics, all sorts of different things. It's also where I download tools like the Cube Designer extension, or I'll be talking about this tomorrow, the migration utilities in order to migrate from on-prem databases to 19c. So that's what the structure here looks like for the new UI. And I think somebody asked, is EAS Lite available on-prem 21c? The answer is yes. It's available for everything except Marketplace. And if you have the old OAC Essbase, it will not work there as well. So I love the questions, because this really is your session today to get you the information that you need. Now, once we get into the 21c, for those of you who are used to 19c or are brand new, we do have an outline editor here. And the outline editor has been enhanced in 21c. The first thing that you see now is, like EAS, you get the number of children that it has, you get attributes, other things. You also have resizable columns. So it was sometimes painful if I had a really long name that I wouldn't get it. And I can always have to remember where this is. We also now have the ability on this screen here, on the screen behind here, to pick what it is that we want to be able to see. So, you know, if I wanted to change this to say, well, I really don't care about the expense tag because I'm dealing mostly with ASO cubes, or I don't want, or I want to add in my format string or something else, or the base member for attributes, or alias tables like my default alias table, I can add them in and they'll show up or be removed. I can also reorder those. So if I come back here and I want something to be closer to the left-hand side because I use it all the time, I can go ahead and reorder all of that. So now we get, like I say, we get the number of children, we get the consolidation operators, everything else. So it does look a little bit more like EAS. Now you'll notice up here it says this is view only, and that's because I have it checked to be able to be set up in EAS. I'm going to go ahead and close this one, come back here, and now what we do, and notice that it also tells us up here that it is being managed by EAS, but my other two databases are not. So if I wanted to look at the application level stuff, I come over here and I say inspect, and I get files, my data sources, configuration files for those of you who are migrating right now is all of the configuration file settings, or 99% of them, are application level settings. And if I wanted to change something, what I do is I come in here and it gives me the list of all of the different settings that I'm allowed to use. And all I would do is click on one. This one really is not applicable to it. And then I would come in here and I would set what my setting is for it. You're going to still have to go and look in the documentation, in the technical reference, or it's called something else now, but for what the values are that you can do. And then by applying it, it's going to restart the application and it'll be available right now. Somebody asked why I keep calling EAS Lite Lite. And is it a fat client or is it a web client? It's a web client. You launch it from Java. And I call it EAS Lite because it doesn't have all of the feature functionality that the on-prem EAS has. For example, you're limited to a server at a time, and there's some things that they just did not put into it because it's just meant to be that temporary thing. I don't remember all of the things that you can or can't do in EAS Lite, but most things that I needed to do when I was testing things out, I was able to do. I don't remember. Here we can also see the settings of the cube, things like, the startup settings, that type of thing. And also here, I can come out here and I can actually see the latest log. So I can get that very quickly. And I can do it interactively, or I could download it if I wanted to do it in Excel. And they keep the logs really small. So I might need to download all of the logs as a zip file if I'm trying to go back multiple days, multiple weeks to be able to see something here. So that's the application level. I can come back here and I can go to the database, and I love this because I can switch back and forth between the two of them just by clicking here. So if I'm on the database level, from here I could launch the outline, and you'll notice now it won't say view only because this one I can view here. Excuse me. As soon as it wants to open. The very first time, by the way, when it's doing this, it's starting the application up. Now you'll notice that I now have an edit button here where I didn't on the other one. So if I edit this one, it does allow me to edit it. I can get to the outline properties here. There's, as it loads up. So the aliases, I can add aliases, I can do dynamic time series, text measures, all of that stuff. And if you were on 19C, the one thing that drove me crazy is I didn't have a verify button. So if I come in here to measures and just screw up a member name, let me go ahead and edit this member, and I can edit it just right here. And I'm going to call this sales 1. And it's going to fail anyway, but I'm going to apply and close it. Now if I verify, it's going to tell me I've got a problem over here and exactly where that problem is. So before that, even if there was a problem, it didn't tell you there was a problem. It just would go ahead and save the outline. Or if it was a big problem, it would just give you this weird error message that says you've got a problem and maybe have a little X over here. So they've gotten better with this by adding in the verify. You can still here, if you were 19C, you can still come over here and add this display over here. If you don't like managing things in here, you can turn it off. You have all of the feature functionality in here. Even if you want to turn this into a hybrid cube, I could come over here to my product dimension, and I could actually say make this hierarchy dynamic, and it will turn this hierarchy all dynamic if I'm using this in a hybrid mode. By default, what's going to happen to all of your databases when you bring them over into 21c is they will all become Unicode enabled, and for BSO cubes, they will also turn on the switch to allow it to be hybrid. It doesn't mean you have to have it as hybrid, but you can have it turn on hybrid. So let's see what else I want to talk about there.
Glenn, if I may,
Sure.
hybrid is on by default on the 21c platform, but it's only effective if you actually make sparse upper levels or sparse formulas dynamic. So it's a bit innocuous to bring a BSO cube over onto the server without actually changing the sparse storage. But hybrid is on by default for query across the board, and it should be left that way unless support asks you to make some change. The calc can also be hybrid enabled optionally using the application configuration.
Right. I was just going to say that so I'm actually going to close this out right now because I don't think I wanted to talk about anything else in there. But remember, I had talked about the configuration settings here. If you want to turn your block storage cube into hybrid, there is, and I can never remember the name of it. I have to look in here and find it. I think it's hybrid enabled for, hybrid BSO in CalcScript. You're going to want to turn this on because it will optimize your calc scripts to work in hybrid mode. So when you do bring things over, one of the considerations is, are you going to do any type of conversion for hybrid or other things? You will have to go through and look at your config file setting on the server level and decide what you want application by application. If you were on 19C, if you wanted to change substitution variables, or if you wanted to even see them, there were 3 different places that you could go. The first one is you could inspect the database level, and there will be substitution variables here. If you go to the application level, there are substitution variables here for application level variables. And if you want global variables, you come over here to the console card and you look at variables. In 19C, all you would see here would be the server level variables. Now what they do is they also show us what is at the application or the database level. And I've actually asked for enhancements, but right now I could come in here and I could add a variable, just call it whatever and save it, and you'll see that it shows up here, and it will show you that it's a server level variable, and I can delete it. If I try and delete one for an application or a database, it says that it did it, but you'll notice it's still here. If you have application or database level variables, they show up here so you can see what they all are, but you actually have to go to the application or database level to delete them. If you can do me a favor, if you have questions, if you can put them in the Q&A instead of the chat, I would appreciate it, because I can't look at everything at once. If you're on-prem and you have calc scripts or other things that you're running. For example, this calc all, it's a very simple calc script. There's a few things that they've now added, changed for calculation scripts. The first one is that you can actually see all of the functions in an alphabetical listing as well as the categorical, like you could in EAS. They've also added the ability to execute right from this window. And we have two choices. We can either run it here, which this is a really quick script, so I'm not really worried about it. Or we could run it in background. And what this actually does is it creates a job to run this. So if we close this out and we go to the jobs card, you can see here's our calculation that ran, and we can look and we can see the results of it. So my mouse is acting weird. So that's it on calc scripts, but we do have the ability to validate them. It works just like it did in EAS. We now also have the ability, if we come back here, and this is a little different from 19C, is we also now have the ability to create and run report scripts. Now, they didn't give us the report script language in here, so you're going to have to go to the documentation and look at it to figure out what you're doing. Excuse me, but now the UI will allow us to run and execute report scripts as well as calc scripts and other things. And we can run them and download the output to wherever we need to do it. One of the things that we now have, if I come over here to the jobs card, is it's similar to EAS, is we have the ability when we're doing data loads or dimension builds to be able to select multiple files. So if I say sample basic, and this is a dimension build, I come over here and I say, okay, well, I've got my my market text file here, and oh, maybe it's only data loads. Oh, okay, it's only data loads. I mean, it's, yeah. So I started to lie to you. Let's do a data load job. So if I select an application here and I come over here to my file, yep, and I say, select my file here, I can select it, I can add the rules file for this one. And if I had another file, I could add it in here. And so I can get multiple files at one time. And what it will really do is it will run these sequentially. And one of the things that I had asked is if this were an ASO cube, if we can get this to load to a buffer. And I don't think that that will do it yet. So if you want to use load buffers and the like, you're still going to use Maxell to do it. So that works, like I say, a little bit like EAS does as well. They have added support in here for those few weird customers that are still doing currency conversion. So if you've got a currency-based cube, it will still work and you can manage it in here as well. Somebody asked, are report scripts the same as in 11.124, an earlier version. Yes, the report script language, they really are not enhancing, but they did put it in here for backward compatibility for those people who are using report scripts. Somebody asked, we have a BSO that has complex formulas and has transparent partition to an ASO cube. What is the recommendation to migrate this cube to 21c? And you can migrate it as is today, but you might want to consider also maybe just converting it to a hybrid cube. You may not need the partition anymore. So somebody asked, is the marketplace install much simpler to do and are upgrade patches simpler under the method than 21c? And the advantage of the difference between marketplace and this install anywhere, there's a couple of differences. The first one is that with the marketplace install, they provide you with what are called Terraform scripts in order to build everything. And with marketplace, you're going to be using Identity Management Cloud Service, IDCS, security. With the install anywhere, basically, the Essbase independent, you're either going to use your own WebLogic install, or you're going to use the foundation services, shared services install like you have for EPM. Now, here's the deal, and if you want to hear a lot more about this tomorrow, because both Karen and I talk about it, is not, you cannot share shared services between, say, Planning 11.2 and Essbase 21c. They have to be separate installs. Now, if you have a common user base, you can actually migrate the users. You can create a process to migrate users and groups between your EPM environment and your Essbase environment to keep those in sync, but they're completely independent of each other. So just be aware that while you can use shared services security, it's going to be its own instance of it. I'm just looking at my list here, cheating on things here. While I can't show it to you, I've been talking about hybrid cubes, and Essbase 21c has the latest and greatest version of the hybrid engine, what they're calling Gen 2 hybrid, that allows for more complex top-down dependent calculations, and it also has improved the calculation capabilities by being data-driven. So it really identifies the intersections that you're dealing with and only looks at those. So hybrid performance has improved significantly. So we have all of that. So if you're going to be converting to hybrid, or you're going to migrate from 19C to 21C when it comes out in marketplace, you're going to get better performance in a hybrid, and it can do a lot more. Somebody asked, oops, that disappeared. They asked, is the SAML2 supported? And SAML2 is supported for all modes of security, whether it be IDCS in marketplace, or whether it be through WebLogic, or whether it be through shared services. All of that is supported. There is a big difference for those of you who are going to install this on your own, either on your own environment or your own cloud environment versus 21c in Marketplace. And that is that 21c in Marketplace supports something that the 21c independent will not support. And that's creating what we call federated partitions. And in Marketplace, it will support creating federated partitions, but only back to an Oracle Autonomous Data Warehouse. And that's because they really needed that connection to be pretty tight. And what that does is it allows you to, what a federated partition does is it allows you to read data from your relational database like it were a transparent partition into an Essbase cube. So it will pull the data in pretty seamlessly, but it won't work if you're on-prem or somewhere else. Let's see. There's another feature that I'm going to tell you about, and I'm going to tell you if you want to learn more about it. Karen, who's doing it tomorrow? Tim, I think it is Tim Fash as well. There is a new feature functionality that is called shadow cubes. Now, a lot of you who are on-prem do things like your processing window is pretty long, but you need to have a maximum uptime of your cube. So you'll go into the file system, you'll make a copy of the cube. Behind the scenes, you'll do updates to it. And then the last second, you'll switch it back, doing file system copies, and you'll reassign security, and you'll do all of this stuff manually. Well, with 21c, you don't have to do that anymore, because what we have is something that is called shadow cubes. And Tim will go into great detail tomorrow, but basically right now it's available through what we call REST API calls. And by doing so, what we do is we create a shadow cube. It turns your regular cube into a read-only cube, because obviously you don't want people to update it while you're doing the updates. You do all of your updates into this background cube, basically a copy of your cube. And then what happens at the end is you promote it back to be the regular cube, which means that you don't have to worry about security or anything else. That will all be taken care of automatically. And you can actually even decide whether or not you let people see that backup cube. Maybe you have a couple of people who need to see it to validate that the numbers are good before you promote it back in. So you can set that up, but you don't have to write your own routine anymore. You can use the built-in functionality that is there to be able to get all of that done. I'm really excited about that. I actually worked with Karen and group and a client to work out some of the details to make sure that it would meet everybody's needs. Let's see. Will Fdme 11.2 integration work with Essbase 21c without any issue? And my answer to that is I have no idea. I know that we've actually asked that, and I don't think anybody's actually tested it yet. I don't know that the connectors in Fdme will connect. Well, I guess if it's an on-prem cube, it would work, but I'm not sure.
The EPM team is actively looking at taking up 21c Essbase for their portfolio. So for EPM apps that have Essbase embedded. That's a definite maybe down the road, but it needs to be addressed by the EPM team officially. And at the same time, they could answer about what their plans are for 21c Essbase standalone apps that are outside of the EPM portfolio. So I also don't know, but I know that Matt Bradley has publicly committed in his most recent blog, which you could all go read and ask him lots of questions about it. You know, he's looking at 21c Essbase and has given the nod.
Terrific, thank you. See, Karen has the most up-to-date information. My information on that was about a month and a half old, where they said, we don't know. Somebody asked, is there anything missing from 21c on-prem as compared to 11.1.2 besides Studio? So Studio is missing. It has not been brought forward, but the functionality to do drill through is there. And in some ways, I think that the drill through is much better than it was from Studio, because I can be more explicit in how I do my my information. So if I came in here and I inspect here and I go to scripts and I come here to drill through reports and I create one, and I'm just going to give it a name. I like that name. I don't know why. And so what I had done is I already had created a data source, and these are the columns in my data source. And I can come in here and I can say, okay, I want all of these, and I'm going to map this to my product dimension, and that's level 0. And I'm going to map this to my year dimension, and that's level 0, et cetera, et cetera. And then I can come in here to this drillable region. And in here, I can come in and I can add a region in here that says, I only want this to happen if I'm on the member called sales, and if I'm on January, if I could spell. And I would, you know, if I were really doing this, I'd put the quotes and I'd be using other things. And maybe I want this for actual. And that would be one of my regions. But I could also come in here and give a different region and say, if I'm on COGS and February and budget, then I also want to be able to do this drill through. And obviously I would pass the account, and I would pass the month, and I would pass the scenario back into this query to get the data I want. But in Studio, I couldn't do this. I could say that I wanted to be at generation 2 of scenario, but I couldn't pick specific members that I wanted to be on. So in this way, I think that this is a lot more functional. And I just wrote a blog because I found out about new functionality that a client was asking about, that actually development didn't quite know about either. And that's to be able to run with basically God, I just lost the word. A stored procedure, actually a function. So what we could do is, instead of picking here, we can actually pass parameters into a function in SQL Server or an Oracle database and have it run a whole process in order to get our data back. So we're basically passing in our parameters to a function that returns our information. I wrote a blog on it. If you want the details, you can look at that. Let's see. We are on OAC Essbase in Marketplace. The recommended migration path, I really do not worrying about installing anything. So once you go to either 19C or to 21C, you will be responsible for managing your environment. the migration from OAC to either 19C or 21C is pretty straightforward. If you come, my session tomorrow is on migration, and I'll talk about the migration utility there that you can use to migrate the entire environment forward, but you will have to still maintain it, unfortunately. The one thing I will say is companies like Interrel and other companies do offer a managed services offering where we will maintain your system for you. So, you know, if you don't want to maintain it, there are a number of companies that will do that for you. Will an AIX version be coming soon? And the answer is, I don't think it will be soon. I know that the next major push is a Windows version because the majority of users are on Windows. The reason they could do the Linux version so quickly is because that's what they're running in their own Oracle Cloud infrastructure. So that was a no-brainer for them. But the one-offs, the AIX and HPs, are, if they ever show up, are going to be way down the line. I don't know when they will come out. Karen, is there anything else missing from 21C besides Studio that you can think of?
Nothing major. No, Studio is the big deprecated feature, and of course EAS in its fullest form.
Correct. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, concerning shadow cubes, we've been using APS to update our other cubes in cluster. So basically they're saying that they do incremental builds like every 15 minutes. Can they continue to do that? And I'm assuming that you're probably doing something like the Java API to do those updates, and those can continue on. They also say, but a full, incremental rebuild of their cube can take hours. So what I would say is that for doing that, you're going to want to use a shadow cube, but the during the day type of increments, you could use your Java API or whatever method you are doing. If you can't stop the active updates to the cube, then you're not going to be able to use shadow cubes, because shadow cubes will put the active database into a read-only mode, because it doesn't make sense to do an update of a cube while you're changing data in the background. So somebody asks if we're doing Studio for metadata build, what's the best way to replace that? And frankly, so again, I'll talk about this tomorrow, but right now in your automation in your Maxell, you're probably using a deploy command. One of the nice things about 19C, 21C is you can actually look at the load rules that Studio had originally created, and you can edit them and change them. So basically what you have to do is you have to look at the log from your Studio build, figure out what dimension build rules it was using in what order, and just build that into Maxell. Can you export all of the data? Does it still save to the server for on-prem, or do you have the option to save it elsewhere? So that really hasn't changed. In here, I can do it either from Maxell or from a job. And so I would come in here and I would export data, and depending on the cube it is, it's going to figure out what level of data. There is a difference in 19C and 21C though. If I actually export the data. It's not going to export it into the app directory that you have on-prem. What it's going to do is it's actually going to put it into the database directory. So you can see here that it's in application sample basic, and then it gives it a name like, this weird name down here. So it's going to put it in the database directory. I could come here and I could download it, or I could use a utility. Once I've run this, I could use a utility called Essbase CLI and download it from the database directory down to an on-prem. I can't do that with Maxell, but I can embed a CLI command in my Maxell script to have it called. So I can do all of that. Hopefully that answers that one. I just like answering questions. Can 21c support Windows Server 2016 and just not 2019? And I don't know the support matrix for that. You could actually go to the documentation, and there is a support matrix out there of what is supported. The last thing, because I've only got like 6 minutes, and I appreciate all the questions. Let me move this over.
Glenn, one last little comment on your last answer. When you look in the support matrix, please be careful to make sure you're looking at what is supported for the RCU schemas versus data sources so that you get the correct answer to your question, Jared.
Thank you. Okay. There are also a whole bunch of enhancements into Cube Designer, and Tim German tomorrow has a session where he'll be talking in great detail about some of these, in addition to doing some really cool things like cleaning up the icons and making them nice and pretty and the like. You can do a lot more with Cube Designer now. So for those of you who are on-prem who don't know what Cube Designer is and are looking to migrate, Cube Designer is basically an offline cube maintenance utility. So I can come here, and I think hopefully I'm still connected. I could take one of my cubes, and I'm not connected. And I'm going to get a whole bunch of warnings here, I think. Maybe, oh, no. So I could take a cube, and this is going to be a single database, and I can export it, and I can export it in parent-child or generation format. I can include the data and calc scripts. If I run this, what it's going to do is it's going to take my cube from the server and download it into a nice readable format. So here's all of my dimensionality, here's my settings, here's my generation names, and then all of my dimensions are brought out here. And what's really nice about this, if I come over here to the designer panel here, I can say, well, show me this hierarchy here, or my measures hierarchy. And if I wanted to find a specific member, I can just click on it and it will bring it to me right here in the form. I use this if I want to design a cube or if I want to do updates. Maybe in my product dimension, I want to add a whole bunch of things. So what I can do is I can come over to the designer panel. I can bring it into the designer panel. If I wanted to add a dimension, I can add it. And then once I've added it, I come over to the dimensions and I can say, okay, this is a attribute dimension and it's going to be on my product dimension. And I can do all sorts of things like this. And then what I would do is I would bring it back in to the cube designer. It's going to add it in. It's going to add a sheet here for my new dimension, wherever it is. And it gives me a starting point, but it is also going to add it over here as what it is. And if I went to my product dimension, it also added it here so I can fill in the values. So I can manage my cubes from Excel in an offline environment. And then once I'm happy with it, I would just click on Build Cube. And if it's a brand new cube, it would allow me to create it, but because it already is here, I could do updates. I'm not going to bother doing it because of time here, but Cube Designer is a great way to manage cubes offline. And I did this at a client that had 8 million members in their product dimension. And all it did was create 8 tabs for product, and it knew how to load all of those up. For those of you who are in 19c, there is now this new, first of all, there's an unlock objects, but there's also this new optimize cube. And what you can actually do with this, and Tim will spend a whole bunch of time tomorrow talking about it, is it will help you determine what dimensions you might want to have dense and sparse. It will help you determine solve orders, block size, what your cache should be. And it does it by going through and looking at different things in the cube. In some cases, it actually will build the cube over and over again with different dense, sparse settings. So I'm not going to have time to go over all of that today, but there's a ton that they've added in for 21c in order to make our lives better. So somebody asks, so Cube Designer is effectively like what old Application Manager was, where you could save your outline calcs to your client offline, do changes and save them back to the server instance? And the answer is yes, that's true, because there is even, like I say, in this case, I actually even stored my calculations and my data. Now, the data will only be in here if it's less than 400 meg. If it's bigger than that, it actually just saves it as a zip file. But yes, but the other thing that I love about Cube Designer is, especially for the outline, I'm like, I now have a way that I've documented all of this in an Excel file. If I wanted to create a data dictionary or for somebody, I can, because it's all right here in Excel. So it makes my life so much easier. The only thing that I wish is that if I download a version of this and Karen downloads a version of it, and then I do a build cube and then she does a build cube, she's going to override my options depending on whether or not she specified merge or something else. I really wish that they had a version here and it would give you a warning that says somebody's updated it since you downloaded it. There is one other really cool feature here that I'm proud of because I got them to add it in. Right now, in 19c and on-prem, you have 2 options. You can merge or you can remove unspecified. And so I got them to add in a new option that's called reset dimension. And this is very helpful for people who have alternate hierarchies and the like and need to rebuild them, where we used to have to delete all of the members and then in the same load rule, re-add them all. So what this reset dimension does is it basically deletes all of your hierarchies in the queue in the dimension and then re-adds it. So it saves us steps from having to do that. So I will tell you that the development team, and I'm putting Karen on the spot here, is very open to ideas and suggestions. You know, this one for reset dimension was something that I brought up to them, and they said, yeah, that's probably a good thing, and they put it into a release. So if you have things that you think would be good enhancements, either contact development, or if you like, I can be your conduit. You know, send me something and I will bring it up with them. I talk to Karen and the development group all of the time.
Yeah, and an SR from a customer labeled as enhancement request is the most powerful way to communicate. I know it's a little tiny bit of paperwork overhead, you know, systematically, but if you file enhancement requests, we do look at them and slot them in for releases, and we can engage in a dialogue if we need more information. But that's really the very best way to bring them forward, because then we know which customers need which things.
Thank you, Karen. So, sorry. So with that, I'm out of time. I'm actually over time. And so I want to thank you all for joining me today. Hopefully you got something out of the session. If you have any other questions that I didn't have a chance to answer for you today, send me an email, either gschwartzberg@interrel.com, or you can send it to info@interrel.com, and I'll be happy to answer it. I only had an hour today. And as I kept alluding to, tomorrow, go to